The diplomatic chamber of Station Nexus 7 buzzed with the usual mixture of contempt and amusement as Ambassador Marcus Chen entered. At barely 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing perhaps 140 pounds soaking wet, the human cut an unimpressive figure among the towering Vorthak delegates and the heavily armored Krithari representatives. "Look at it," chittered Ambassador Zelthera, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the harsh station lighting. "The Terrans send us this, muling to negotiate mining rights in the Centauri belt." The Vorthak delegation's deep rumbling laughter filled the chamber. Ambassador Gorath, standing nearly 9 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, gestured dismissively at Marcus. Perhaps they confused diplomatic missions with pest control. Should we call maintenance? Marcus adjusted his simple gray suit, standard Terran diplomatic attire, and took his assigned seat at the circular table. His hands didn't shake. His breathing remained steady, and his dark eyes held a quiet patience that none of the other species bothered to notice. "Honored delegates," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly despite its lack of booming authority. "Thank you for agreeing to this summit. Earth's proposal for joint mining operations—" "Joint!" The word exploded from Gorath like a thunderclap. "Your species discovered fire barely 10,000 rotations ago. You think to stand as equals with civilizations that have ruled the stars for millennia?" Zelthera's mandibles clicked in agreement. "The Krithari hegemony has documented Terran combat capabilities. Individual physical prowess, negligible. Technological advancement, primitive. Military doctrine, chaotic and emotional. What exactly do you bring to this arrangement besides entertainment?" The chamber erupted in what could only be described as the galactic equivalent of schoolyard laughter. Marcus waited for it to subside, his expression unchanged. That's when the lights went out. Emergency illumination bathed the chamber in hellish red as Station Nexus 7 shuddered under impact. The diplomatic immunity shields, theoretically impenetrable, flickered and died. Through the massive viewing ports, sleek black ships materialized like nightmares given form. "Wraithfleet," whispered a Vorthak aide, his earlier arrogance evaporating. "How did they get through the perimeter?" The Wraith, ancient beyond measure, apex predators of the void who viewed all other life as prey, had found them. Their ships, organic and wrong in ways that hurt to perceive, began attaching to the station's hull like metallic leeches. Chaos erupted. The Krithari scrambled for their weapons, their vaunted military discipline crumbling in the face of primal terror. The Vorthak delegates huddled together, their massive forms trembling. Even the stolid Nuthari began emanating distress pheromones that made the air thick and cloying. Marcus Chen stood up and began removing his jacket. "What are you doing, small one?" Gorath demanded, his voice cracking with fear. "Getting comfortable," Marcus replied, folding the jacket neatly over his chair. He loosened his tie next, then began rolling up his sleeves with methodical precision. This might take a while. The first wraith emerged from the breach in the station's hull, a creature of shadow and hunger, all flowing darkness and razor-sharp appendages. Its eyeless head turned toward the diplomatic chamber, drawn by the concentrated terror within. Ambassador Zelthera screamed. The wraith paused at the sound, its form rippling with what might have been pleasure. It began to move toward the chamber, its movement simultaneously liquid and predatory. That's when Marcus Chen stepped into the corridor. The wraith stopped. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a wraith hesitated in the face of prey, its eyeless head tilted, studying the small human who stood calmly in its path. "You feel it too, don't you?" Marcus said softly, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "You recognize something." The other delegates watched in horror and fascination as the apex predator of the galaxy lowered itself slightly, bringing its head level with the tiny Terrans. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the two beings simply regarded each other. Then the wraith did something that shattered every assumption about its species. It bowed, not submission, recognition. The acknowledgement of one apex predator to another. "I wondered when we'd meet," Marcus continued, his voice taking on a different quality. Gone was the diplomatic pleasantness, replaced by something older and infinitely more dangerous. "We've been waiting for you to notice us. Humans, I mean. We've been very patient." The wraith's form shimmered, and when it spoke, its voice was like the whisper of solar wind across dead worlds. "Kinsmell. Deathbringer scent. How long? Have you hunted the stars?" "About 60,000 years, give or take," Marcus replied conversationally. "Started in Africa, mostly. Small prey at first, mammoths, cave bears, other humans who got in our way. We got better at it over time. Behind him, Ambassador Gorath made a choking sound. Impossible. Your species records show what we wanted them to show, Marcus finished, not taking his eyes off the wraith. Did you really think we'd advertise our nature? We learned early that prey behaves differently when it knows it's being hunted. The wraith's form shifted, almost seeming to smile. Deception hunters, pack killers, we wondered why the galaxy grew so quiet after your kind spread. Oh, that, Marcus shrugged. We're very thorough. The hegemony of Vash, the Stellar Dominion, the Crimson Tide Empire, they all seemed so threatening when we first encountered their ruins. Had to dig deep to find any records of them at all. The mathematical impossibility of what he was suggesting hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Species didn't just vanish. Galactic civilizations left traces, ruins, something, unless the silent zones, whispered a Nuthari delegate. The dead sectors where no signals emerge. Cleanup is important, Marcus agreed. Can't have evidence lying around. Bad for the ecosystem. The wraith's head tilted further. Purpose-driven hunters, territory expanders, why do you wear the prey face? Because they're useful, Marcus said, gesturing back toward the diplomatic chamber. They build things, create art, develop interesting technologies. We prefer to manage our resources rather than simply consume them. Sustainable hunting, you might call it. Management predators. The wraith's voice carried something like approval. Efficient, we respect efficiency. Marcus smiled then, and every delegate in the chamber suddenly understood why humans had always seemed just slightly wrong, why something about their expressions never quite reached their eyes. The mining rights we're negotiating, Marcus continued pleasantly. They're not really about mining. We need to expand our breeding programs, colonies. The current populations are reaching carrying capacity, and we need more space to properly manage our livestock. Citizens, He turned back toward the diplomatic chamber, the wraith moving aside respectfully. Now then, Marcus said, straightening his tie as he re-entered the room. Where were we in our negotiations? I believe Ambassador Zelthara was explaining why her people were reluctant to enter into partnerships with humans. The crystalline delegate's exoskeleton had gone completely transparent with terror. The Krethari hegemony would be honored to discuss terms. Excellent, Marcus beamed, settling back into his chair as the wraith withdrew to its ship. I think this is going to be a very productive relationship for all parties involved. Outside the viewing ports, the sleek black ships of the wraith fleet began to depart, but not before their lead vessel transmitted a message on an ancient frequency that only apex predators knew how to interpret. Territory acknowledged. Hunting grounds respected. Good hunting, kin. Ambassador Marcus Chen straightened his papers and smiled at his fellow delegates with the patient satisfaction of a shepherd counting his flock. The negotiations proceeded remarkably smoothly after that.